Do our conversations about crypto have you wanting to do more with your career? Check out Fidelity, which has been exploring Bitcoin and blockchain since 2014. They were the first traditional asset manager to launch a native crypto business and also among the first to launch a Bitcoin exchange-traded product. So why consider Fidelity? Because they invest in their talent with continuing education programs and they invest in their technology, ensuring associates are working with the latest and greatest so that their crypto teams can continue to improve and evolve their product, staying ahead of the rapidly changing digital asset landscape. With Fidelity's iterative, scalable approach, built to meet today's increasing demands across the digital space and a commitment to developing innovative tools, there's never been a more interesting time to work in crypto and DeFi at Fidelity. Explore Fidelity crypto careers today. Go to crypto.fidelitycareers.com to learn more. That's crypto.fidelitycareers.com. Fidelity is an equal opportunity employer. And now it is on with the show. My guest today is Adam Simmons. Adam is the Chief Strategy Officer at Radix. What is Radix? Well, I don't know. It's like, I guess, the universal asset layer, the better user-developer experience that is needed for Web3 and DeFi. So we'll learn all about this today, but welcome to the show, Adam.
Thank you very much for having me on, Andy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Adam. It's a pleasure to have you here. Let's do what we do at the beginning of the show. It would be, super cool if you could please introduce yourself. Would love to hear some of your personal and professional backstory. Just, bring us up to speed as to, what you've been doing before joining the team at Radix.
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, starting back to the beginning of my career, I've always worked in tech startup, originally in the online video space, grew a business there from pre-seed all the way up to 350 million video views per month across our network in kind of ad tech and online video. From there, there was the great YouTube apocalypse. Some of you may remember that. That was a nightmare for our business at the time. We went from being extremely profitable to basically all advertisers pulling overnight. And as a result, we started looking at, okay, how can we deal with this broken system? And during that kind of period, I co-founded a company in the crypto space that's still running successfully today in the online video space. And about 5 years ago, I joined the Radix team. And so since then, I've taken Radix from, I was about the 21st person who joined the team, through kind of the final token sale, launch of kind of our mainnet, our main smart contract upgrade to the mainnet as well, grow our developer ecosystem, our community, basically done everything on the growth and marketing side there. And a fun little fact is I used to compete for the UK in sprint kayaking. So I've been to 4 world championships and 3 European championships.
I love it. Thank you, Adam. All right. Well, I think it'd be useful just to begin with maybe just give us a sense of, what you guys are doing with Radix, kind of, the high level vision of what you guys do.
Yeah, so Radix is an L1 network. So similar to things like Solana, Ethereum, Sui, etc. So Radix started a long time ago. Our founder really got bitten by the Bitcoin bug back in 2012-ish period of time. He'd successfully exited another tech company that he'd worked with on NFC chips, and as an engineer did what all good engineers did, found out about Bitcoin, started going, okay, this sounds very promising, decentralized money, decentralized networks, this sounds fantastic. How does it work? Started picking it all apart, started using it, and realized that actually, while the vision and premise was fantastic, the major problem was that there's no way it could support everyone using it. And that kind of started him down this meandering journey over the next decade or so, where he was exploring all the different ways that you could scale distributed ledger technology to really cope with the millions of transactions per second that is going to be needed if everyone uses this for payments and global finance and everything else. And that took him down the path of looking at everything from DAGs to hash graphs, to completely novel consensus mechanisms as well. And it took him about 10 years, along with a team built during that time, to basically get to where we are today with Radix, which is, to our knowledge, we are the only company with a proven peer-reviewed design for a unlimited linear scalable consensus mechanism. And what that means is basically, in layman's terms, the more nodes you put on the network, the more throughput you get. So if 10 nodes did 100 TPS, 100 nodes would do 1,000 TPS, etc., forever. And it does that while making sure that every asset, every wallet, every dApp on that network can work instantaneously with any other in a single transaction. And as I say, that's unique to our knowledge. From there,
Yeah, and sorry.
dive in, Andy. So,
well, no, I mean, we don't need to get too technical, Adam, but I was just going to say, there are a number of components that are particularly interesting about Radix, and I guess there's Cerberus, is that how we're saying it? Scrypto,
Cerberus. I made the
Cerberus.
same mistake because X-Men fans will read it as Cerberus from, of course,
Exactly.
the X-Men comics.
Yep, there you go. Well, do you want to just walk us through a couple of those things? As I say, we don't need to get too technical, but just any kind of the main points of difference that make Radix stand out.
Yeah, so Cerberus is the consensus layer for Radix. So as I say, completely novel, has linear scalability while maintaining kind of that atomic composability between apps. When that was kind of designed, we took the approach of going, well, what is the purpose of a DLT? And transferring assets and DeFi was really coming out then. And is the product market fit in our opinion? So we then built Radix Engine, which is the virtual machine for Radix and is what we call asset oriented. So assets on Radix behave more like physical objects rather than a smart contract. And then the final piece to that was going, well, actually, who's going to use this? And then we built the Radix Wallet to plug into the Radix Engine, which is able to work with Cerberus, so that you have this scalable, highly efficient virtual environment that's very secure and very easily programmable, with an interface that everyone from a sophisticated Wall Street banker through to your grandma would be able to confidently use. And that is essentially the full stack of Radix, and why we say that Radix is a full stack solution.
Yeah, and I can just see, so very recently you guys had the integration of Radix with, 150 plus different chains via the Hyperlane bridge. So that should help improve, I guess, the flow of capital in and out of the ecosystem. But just, bring us up to speed with what's happening there. That was only announced about 10 days ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, so depending on when this episode goes out, Andy, it'll either be live or about to be live. So as we're speaking now, Hyperlane have finished their integration. Hyperlane, for those of you who don't know, is a trustless open source modular bridge, which basically means that you can bridge assets from any of the 150 plus chains they support to any others, including Radix. This is a big upgrade because obviously Radix has quite a big DeFi ecosystem for the size of the network, but getting capital and users into that is key. And up until Hyperlane, the only way to do that was either through centralized exchanges or a centralized bridge. Whereas with Hyperlane, that is now completely decentralized and a permissionless way for capital to move in and out of the ecosystem.
And is that because traditionally, bridges have been a kind of a weak point across, various parts of DeFi, Web3, and so on. Is it's a little bit more future proof, though, right?
So definitely a big leading contender in the space. Bridges are always going to be a weak point. It's a honeypot. You're connecting multiple VMs together, so you always have that risk that what happens there. The thing with kind of modern bridges that we've seen a lot is they're decentralized. They're like Hyperlane is open source, for example. They understand that taking security is really important. So the leading bridges now have learned a lot from some of the hacks and exploits that have happened before. On the Radix side as well, our VM is kind of purpose built to manage assets and how they move. So that makes it a lot more secure on the Radix side as well, even from a bridging perspective. And then because it is a trustless bridge and with a permissionless validator set, that kind of adds in an extra layer of kind of core crypto ethos into how anything is committed or how any funds move.
Yeah. I guess, if we go a bit wider, Adam, in terms of, DeFi, one of the key points, I guess that people are building for and hoping will spur the kind of the next wave of adoption and users coming into the space, I suppose, is, really just user experience, which is kind of always been one of, not the holy grail of crypto, but it's been one of the stumbling blocks, certainly. So I guess, the idea being, of course, that the next wave of users don't want to care too much about private keys or consensus mechanisms, the same way that, your Uber driver doesn't really need to know the intricacies of how GPS works. But so how would you guys approach, I suppose, the idea of kind of abstracting away as much of that complexity as possible, just for the user experience? I mean, developers is another story.
So from the user experience standpoint, I think one of the first things that listeners need to kind of get their head around is that nobody at, say, like MetaMask is sitting there going blind signing a transaction hash and hoping for the best. Is like, job done, guys. This is the best user experience we could ever have. Of course, they know that is not what people want or people feel comfortable with, including crypto enthusiasts. Like, if you think about it, it's insane that we accept that. The reason for that is because the Ethereum virtual machine literally doesn't surface any more information to it. So all the wallet receives is this transaction hash. And sure, there's some really cool things being done at the moment in other spaces where you can kind of estimate or try and predict what different smart contract calls will do. But ultimately, that's a prediction rather than actually being enforced by the VM. On Radix, because we have the Radix engine as our virtual machine that actually describes how assets move, the wallet gets that information already in a pretty human readable way, but can then pass that, what we call transaction manifest, that literally describe like 10 USDC goes from Adam's wallet and is going to go to Andy's wallet. And that is, with a little bit of kind of like pseudocode language, is what a transaction manifest would look like on Radix, which means the wallet can pass that, and the end user just sees, okay, 10 USDC is withdrawing from my account and is going to be deposited into Andy's. Am I happy with that? Yes. That isn't a prediction on Radix, though. That is actually enforced by the virtual machine. And so you can do things like, well, if at least, say it's a swap, if at least 99% of what that shows isn't coming back, don't do the transaction. And that is done at the network level rather than the app level, which means that a user can have far more confidence in whatever they're seeing and signing is what is going to happen. And it doesn't matter whether you are, as I say, a sophisticated institutional player who is making sure from compliance the transaction is going to happen as you want, all the way down to your grandma, you want to know what's going to happen there. The second piece is, as you say, it's things like seed phrases and private key management. So again, the virtual machine on Radix understands this concept of, we call them smart accounts, but is similar in some ways to account abstraction, with the key difference being, if you're familiar with account abstraction on like Ethereum and elsewhere, you still have a single key controls an account, and you put a layer on top of that. On Radix, we have this concept of the access controller, which basically every account understands it can have multiple keys and arranged in different configurations and with recovery methods, completely decentralized, built into that account itself. And being able to do that means that you don't end up in a scenario where one key is one account. The access controller does that, and you can even do really cool things there where like you can truly delete an account on Radix, which weirdly is impossible elsewhere. So on Radix, the access controller can basically send its permission to its own account that it's controlling, and then it's verifiable on Ledger. No one can use that account ever again. Whereas on Ethereum, you can say, well, no one can use that again, but of course they could if they had the seed phrase or the private key. So there's some cool things there. But really, to round it out, like, all of these things are very obvious in hindsight. As you say, like, people don't need to understand this. It should just be intuitive. And actually, a lot of the stuff that happens in crypto is only unclear because the UX is very poor. Like, anyone who's done an international transfer, has used like an IBAN and BIC or SWIFT or something, that's still just a long string of numbers. People are comfortable doing that if the interface and the explainers around that make sense to them.
Yeah, 100%. It's very well articulated, Adam. And I guess you're kind of doing the same for developers with, the Radix blueprints and the developer royalties, which are, I suppose, designed to make code, modular, reusable, self-paying even. So how would you explain that as in terms of, empowering developers to then in turn inspire users, right?
Yeah, so Radix Engine is programmed with a language called Scrypto, which is essentially some components added onto Rust. So it uses all of the Rust tooling, syntax, and everything else. The important thing to think about in how we designed Scrypto and Radix Engine from a developer standpoint is that there's two separate pieces. There's what a developer wants to be able to create and how that makes assets move. So on the asset movement side, that's all controlled by finite state machines, where you basically have to program what is allowed to happen and what the expected outcomes are, rather than what isn't. And that makes asset security really, really easy. And that's great for developers because you don't really want to be worrying about that side of things. You want it to behave predictably. You don't want these edge cases like reentrancy attacks or some similar kind of scenarios. Whereas on the other side, you want the flexibility to be able to build really cool things and have complete Turing, what's called Turing complete functionality within the code. And so Radix Engine and Scrypto allow those two things to happen. On the blueprint side of things, the way I describe like Radix Engine and Scrypto in general is it's almost like a game engine for DeFi. So you can edit the game engine and add things and change things however you want, but most people want gravity. Most people want physics and the rendering engine. You don't want to start by building that. And Radix Engine has all of that built in. The other piece, though, is, as you mentioned with blueprints, is when you deploy something as a developer, say it's a swap component, you don't necessarily want to go and reinvent the wheel every time. Like anyone who's ever done any development knows that there's a decent amount of copy pasting coming off the internet happening. That's often called boilerplate code. However, on Radix, in a blueprint, you could just call that blueprint to use a function or an entire dApp in the same way as you would call another smart contract. On the developer side, though, putting all that up has to have a commercial incentive. And so one of the reasons we designed blueprints the way we did was so that there can be what we call a developer royalty fee. And that's set by the developer. So say I make a simple token swap component. I could say anyone else who uses this component in a transaction has to pay me a 10,000th of a cent. Obviously, if you can see as a developer and also as a user, if you're more aware of this, that swap component has done $10 billion of transactions through it safely, you're going to be like, cool, I'm just going to use that one. The developer doesn't pay it. It goes into the transaction fee if it's called. So there's high trust and you don't have to re-implement the same things again. On the other side, you have and the reason why we have it set by the developer is you could have a super complex component. So again, my silly example is, let's say you're a developer who knows finance really well and you're like, if the Yankees win a game on a full moon and you hit this button, you'll print $1 million of profit. But it's going to take me 6 months to build it. There is no way that a VC or anyone else is going to fund you to build that. That sounds crazy. However, as an end user, if you knew that button exists and the Yankees won a game on a full moon and you hit and you made $1 million, but you had to pay a $500,000 transaction fee, which most of that is a royalty to the developer who made it, personally, I'd still hit that button to get the free 500 grand. And so this flexibility means that developers can make components that can be reused that are either kind of mass market, going to be used at a very, very high degree of transactions and can be modular, or they can build very specific things that may be used in very niche circumstances, which ultimately drives up competition, which gives end users, be that retail or institutions, more functionality and more things that they can do on the Radix network.
Got it. Thank you, Adam. Of course, what it's all about, though, is attracting users, right? And what do users want? Well, they want incentives, don't they, Adam? And funnily enough, you've got a massive incentives campaign underway, I guess now, is it? So, I mean, you can explain it, but the Radix Foundation, you've got like, 1 billion XRD incentives campaign over, coming up to two-year time period. So using that stablecoin reserve to essentially attract users, right?
100%, and specifically capital into the network. So Radix rewards, again, going live imminently, depending on when this episode comes out. The reason we've done it this way is that Radix has taken kind of the less trodden path in crypto, if I might say. So over the last 10 years, it's like, what is the end state and working backwards from that, rather than chasing short-term hype cycles. We've got an incredible ecosystem on Radix, thanks to how intuitive it is to build. We've got like 35 plus dApps already in the ecosystem in the last kind of 2 years since the Radix mainnet went live. What we really need now is capital and liquidity in that. And as you say, incentives are the things that drives capital in the ecosystem. We've seen that with everything from kind of the original Arbitrum airdrops and campaigns through to the more recent like Sonic and Hyperliquid campaigns. And we're doing a similar one with Radix. So 1 billion tokens is approximately 7% of the total supply of Radix. And that is going to be given out across a couple of seasons over the next, as you say, 18 to 24 months. And what we're doing there with season 1 kicking off soon is, rather than just giving an airdrop for people to come and use the network, you earn points every single week based on DeFi activity you do. So that could be trading, could be lending and borrowing, could be providing liquidity to DEX pools, and all of those earn you points. The more points you earn, the more XRD you'll get at the end of the season, effectively. And the other piece to that is, because we also want to reward people who are holding the XRD token, is rather than just having that favor them by holding XRD, earning you points, that gives you a multiplier to anything. So it doesn't automatically reward whales, but does mean that if you're holding a lot of XRD, you have an even bigger incentive to come and use the network and take part in there.
And just for people listening, Adam, just explain exactly how people can get involved in this campaign and, look to participate and get something out of it. What can they do?
So super simple. Step one, you need the Radix wallet. So go and download the Radix wallet, wallet.radixdlt.com. That'll show you how to set it all up. Step two, go to incentives.radixdlt.com. Enroll any accounts that you want, and you can link multiple accounts together. So if you've got, say, like a cold storage wallet where you're having your staked XRD is different to the wallet where you're doing your DeFi activity, you can link those together so you earn points on all of them as aggregate. Then you just need some XRD and assets. So you can get some XRD by bridging across or doing a cross-chain swap with, say, like RocketX or Maya. Astral Lesson is a really great aggregator for that. And then you need to bring bridged assets over to deploy into the ecosystem, which you can do via Hyperlane on UseNexus. So that's kind of the process. Have XRD, bring some bridge assets over, put those bridge assets to work in the ecosystem. The more XRD that you hold, the more bridge assets you put into the DeFi ecosystem on Radix, the more points you earn and the more of that airdrop you get. Yeah,
fantastic. And look, you mentioned, the Radix founder, Dan Hughes, of course, and of course, Dan unfortunately passed away earlier this year. But I know that's kind of a talking point amongst the Radix community. But just anything you want to say in terms of how the team or the new leadership is kind of carrying on Dan's vision, if you like.
Yeah, it was a massive shock. Dan passed unexpectedly. He was in his mid-40s. It was literally about 3 weeks ago at the time of recording. So it was a massive shock to everyone, both in the team and also the community, even within the wider ecosystem. So like Charles Hodgkinson from Cardano tweeted about it. He was a well-known person back from 2012 working on this in a very principled way. And while it is very sad that has happened, one of the kind of silver linings, if you can call it, from there is just the outpouring of people who've been inspired by Dan to either get involved in the industry or partake in the industry, even as competitors to Radix, but also the Radix community being like, this is what Dan has been building for over a decade. This is where we want to get to, and has really rallied behind that. So in terms of the internal team and also the Radix community, we all know how positive Dan was about this. And the frustrating bit is that after this really long journey, we're kind of finally getting to the point where like we've got the incentives campaign happening, the mainnet's all up and running, we've got this great ecosystem. Things were starting to be like, hey, you can really see this taking off now and fulfilling that vision you have. It's very sad that he is not going to be able to see that personally, but it's definitely drawn the community and the internal team to being rallied behind actually making sure that vision becomes a reality and doing everything we can to do that, based on those principles that Dan had around creating a better, fairer, more efficient kind of global network for finances and assets.
Yeah, 100%. Very, very well said, Adam. Thank you for that. I guess then, as we start to finish up, just this part of the podcast, where are we at? Just go wide, Adam. Love to get your kind of thoughts on where the industry is in general. I guess anything you like, but kind of DeFi. Where does the next wave of users come from? How are we looking at the moment? What's the sentiment? What do you think?
Yeah, I think anyone who knows the technology adoption curve familiarly you've got like the innovator stage that was, to be honest, up until around the 2017 point. Then you get the like early adopters stage where that was like your ICO boom. Then we've had DeFi summer, which I'd still say was in the early adopter phase. Like all of this was proof of concept. It was things that could be built without using actual assets or things that people really understood why they would want them or how it would interact with their real life, but going, hey, that's a really cool thing to do. So a really great example of this that someone once told me was they recalled seeing the first webcam stream over the internet. And apparently, I don't know if it was actually the first, but the first they saw was an aquarium at Cambridge University being streamed across the internet. And you're like, that's amazing. But why do I want to watch a fish in a tank across? Whereas now people are watching us talking. And I'm sure historians will go, why did anyone want to listen to that? But of course, this is the sort of thing where you're like, that's a proof of concept. Or the beer drinking app on the original iPhone, where it looked like you had a pint in your hand, you tipped it up, and it slowly went down. It was amazing. It was useless, but it was amazing. That spurred a bunch of innovation. And so I think that's what we saw in those kind of ICO eras and DeFi summer. What we're seeing now is that kind of unlocked a lot of brain cells across institutions, retail, financial markets, even governments, of going, hey, this technology is really, really powerful and can do a bunch for efficiency, liquidity, and basically market factors. What we're currently seeing as the next wave, I think we're approaching the chasm. Again, in tech, the chasm is the bit where you try and jump from early adopters to kind of the early majority. It's notoriously hard to bounce through. But things like the Genius Act in the US, MiCA in the EU, and really the use of stablecoins is starting to do that. People going, hey, I can get my head around the idea of, obviously dollar-denominated stablecoins are big at the moment, but like, I know what a dollar is. I can understand why I'd want to send $1 on a network where it costs me fractions of a cent rather than 2%. That's why we're seeing PayPal, Stripe, the US government, everyone else going, hey, this makes sense. We're also seeing from a financial market side, people going, hey, I can take consumer deposits, put them into like treasury yields and make a yield on those. And they get better efficiency and more usability from their dollars than they would do in the traditional financial system. Hey, I can make money from that. I like that. So I think that's the wave we're seeing at the moment, is really that kind of use case of stablecoins and payments coming in as a easy one for people to get their head around. The next step to that is, of course, what we're already seeing the biggest institutions in the world talking about, which is RWAs, or tokenizing kind of real world assets. So, I mean, Larry Fink from BlackRock is saying they're being like, we can tokenize everything. Same with Vanguard, Fidelity, everyone else. And again, it's the same reason. They can create a more efficient, more liquid market. And ultimately, all global finance wants to do is deploy capital into liquid markets based on opportunity and risk. And DLTs do that orders of magnitude better. It's the same as how much better the internet is at transferring data compared to newspapers transferring media information. Plus whole new mediums coming through there as well. So I think that's what we'll see next. I think there's some regulation pieces there, but people are going to get comfortable, especially like businesses and more sophisticated users are going to become comfortable with stablecoins, which will then lead to kind of like RWAs, which then going these proof of concepts like DEXs and automated market makers, which are frankly incredible, going, hey, this works really well. But whereas before they were for food coins, they can then suddenly become for assets that people want to hold and trade in kind of more mainstream circles. And that's where we'll see this really quickly pick up, in my opinion.
I like it. I like it a lot. Thank you, Adam. All right. Well, to finish up this part of the podcast, Adam, just for people that want to learn more about the wonderful Radix community, everything that is on offer, all the products and services, the incentives campaign, just what is the best place for people to go? What should they do?
So the website is obviously the first part of call. So radixdlt.com. That's really easy. You can just type like Radix Crypto into Google as well. It will be the first result. From there, we've got an amazing community on Twitter or X, depending on which one you want to call it, plus Telegram. And there's just so many OGs. Like, I know everyone says it, but the thing that I always hear, and regardless from anyone, is Radix, pound for pound, has the best community in crypto.
I love it.
Many have been around for decades plus, following Dan's vision, and want to see this built through in the right ways for the right reasons. And I've never had anyone tell me that they haven't had a nice time when they join the Radix community.
There you go, folks. Yes, indeed. And that, the website, radixdlt.com, link is in the show notes. That means, Adam, it is time to start to finish up the episode. And we do that, of course, by running you through the very famous crypto conversation hot take round. Are you up for it?
I am definitely up for it.
I knew you would be, Adam. So how this works is I'm just going to run some questions at you. There's no right or wrong way to do it. I just want you to give me kind of quick, rapid fire, if you like, kind of hot take style answers. Anyway, we'll see what you've got to say. Question 1 for you, Adam, is where would you say that you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-chain opportunist spectrum?
Multi-chain, but it's going to consolidate over the next 5 to 10 years because of network effects.
Like it. I like it. All right. Well, what would you say then, Adam, is your firmest conviction crypto opinion?
DeFi is inevitable, not because of ideological reasons, but because of pragmatic benefit to financial ecosystems.
Good. Like that one. All right. Adam, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. As you know, a crypto guy, you'd be very familiar with that line of thinking. 10 years, of course, a long time indeed in blockchain, but cast your mind forward. Anything you like here, but I guess we're thinking, Radix, what does it look like in 10 years' time?
There will be entirely new, what we consider as financial markets that don't exist today. So a fun one I always like is, I can imagine a world where you've got an in-game asset that is valuable that you use as collateral to borrow for a payday loan or something to buy a pizza or something like that, all the way through to the merging of assets as we consider them today as financial products to a much broader idea of things that include like your identity, your experience, your reputation, and things like that. And again, I'm a gamer at heart, so a fun one I have here is, imagine playing a video game. You've been great at, say, Call of Duty or something. You could use a decentralized login or passkey, which is actually something Radix offers, to log into a new first-person shooter game, and you then don't have to go through the tutorial or play against a bunch of matchmaking sessions because they know you were good in the other game because your reputation follows you. And I think these are the kind of cool things that DLTs can do.
100%. Another way of thinking about this, of course, is it's a wonderful quote by William Gibson, which I'm sure you're aware of, Adam. Mr. Gibson, of course, said that the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Now, with that in mind, can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people aren't aware of it?
Decentralized exchanges, which I know is really boring, but I think it's something we'll see with stablecoins happen, is the idea of kind of foreign currency exchange at the airport being done by a bunch of intermediaries will be crazy to us. Like digital assets of like dollars and euros just being swapped instantaneously through liquidity pools just is better than today, and it could be done technically in seconds. So I think that's a good example.
Fantastic example. Hard to argue with that. Brings us nicely to the final question, Adam, which is very simply, what is your favorite science fiction book, film, or TV show?
So it's a bit of a recency bias, but the Apple TV series Foundation, which is, of course, loosely based on Isaac Asimov's series. Absolutely phenomenal. And I know it's only loosely based on it, but probably in one of my top, if not top, science fiction TV show in existence.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think I must admit I haven't watched it, but yeah, does look good.
I would 100% recommend it. 100%. Absolutely amazing.
All right, that's a great recommendation. Thank you, Adam. And look, thank you for coming and spending some time with us today here on the show. And look, there's nothing else to do really except to get you to close it out. And I would invite you to do so again just by directing people back to Radix. Tell them how they can get involved. Shout out your socials, anything you like. Please do go for gold.
RadixDLT.com. Why is now a good time to get involved in Radix? We've been building for 10 years plus. We've got an amazing ecosystem of DeFi dApps. We're about to have 7% of our total supply available as an airdrop campaign, and Hyperlane as a trustless bridge as a way to get in and out of Radix from over 150 different networks are all hitting now. And there's no better time to get started other than yesterday.
Yes, indeed. Very well said. Hey, thank you so much, Adam. All the best, and bye for now.
Thank you.